The People's Business is made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
A very good evening to you and welcome to this edition of The People's Business. I'm your presenter, Broome. Now, it may not be crop over as many have come to know it over the years, but in just 3 more days, local promoters will once again be able to host in-person parties and entertainment events, including Calypso tents, albeit with restricted numbers and strict COVID-19 protocols in place. Now, the announcement came from Prime Minister Mia Motley last weekend, and that's what we're discussing tonight on The People's Business, the conditional reopening of the country's entertainment sector. And joining me to explore the different sides of this development is an esteemed panel. We have President of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, Dr. Lynda Williams, Head of the COVID-19 Monitoring Unit, Ronald Chapman, CEO of Ticketpal, Orlando Newton, and Bandleader for Xhosa, Barbados, Jeremy Nicholls. And we get to the discussion right after this break. Now, before we get to our panel, we'll just share with you some of what Prime Minister Motley said when she announced some of the restrictions which will be lifted after June 30th.
We are going to therefore allow entertainers and not entertainers, promoters and stages of events to have parties, lines, whatever you want to call them, that are focused on people, that are limited to 150 persons in any one location. It doesn't mean that that promoter can't have multiple sites of 150, because we live in a world where the technology now allows us to do all kinds of things and all kinds of innovations, and therefore you may find a single promoter beaming or streaming to 3, 4, 5 events at 150. At the same time, we have agreed that they will work through the National Cultural Foundation and the Ministry of Health with Mr. Chapman's COVID monitoring unit, obviously indicating the conditions. We are going.
Now, the Prime Minister also revealed that party promoters would receive some support for their infrastructural costs. And we move to our panel now, and I want to get started with Dr. Williams. We've had some good-ish numbers. We have some 0 days. We've had single digits, and we have a vaccination program that is not where we want it to be in terms of ideally. But we have gotten to a stage where we're over 90,000 almost in terms of vaccinations. Are we ready? Are we ready to embrace the newer restrictions, the ease restrictions come June 30th?
Well, thank you for having me, Ryan. The most important thing that we must remember is that COVID-19 is here to stay, and we have to learn to live with it. We have to learn how to balance the economic versus the public health realities. And one of the major concerns we have had as a country is the vaccination uptake, yes, but also our ability to test enough people to find out where we really are in terms of how much disease burden we have in our population. And so we have to weigh these things against the need for economic recovery and for allowing business and health to be balanced against each other. We obviously, as medical practitioners, we have to have a more cautious approach because there are new variants with higher transmissibility in the sphere right now, and so we have to be ever mindful that this disease can die down well, and then you can see it flare back up again in pockets, in clusters, and ultimately spread even faster than that. And that's the pattern of the disease that we have seen all over the world and even here in Barbados. You may get a low level and then you may get a sudden increase in numbers. We have to remember that if we're not testing enough people, we will never be able to see when we have a greater number than we expect. So right now we were measuring low levels for a few days, but as you can see, in just the last few days, we have gone from just having 6 or 7 cases in a cluster to another cluster to a family cluster. That is the pattern on the nature of COVID-19. So we ever have to be cautious, and we can never be fully ready, but we have to balance. We have to balance public health against economic reality.
And how should we respond to that? Obviously, we did have those, as you said, that spike in cases, those clusters that were identified by the health minister and health officials last week. How do we respond to that? Do we say, well, we're now living with this thing and we have to kind of do something, we have to move forward? I think the central bank governor had said that we can ill afford another major shutdown. How do we move forward? Do we accept that we will see these clusters and just try to make it a containment situation? Is that how we deal with that?
Well, we always have to remember what is our capacity. What is our capacity as a nation? How much disease burden can we handle? COVID is not the flu. It has a much higher possibility of people hospitalized and being severely ill. And even if 5% of the people who get COVID become severely ill, it puts a great disease burden on the country. And we only have so much manpower, equipment, etc. And it causes the entire health care system to be under strain. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful that, clusters can quickly get out of hand and that people can rapidly spread. And that's our contact tracing so far has been quite good in Barbados, but we have other means that we believe could be used to enhance that contact tracing, such as electronic means that could enhance it, particularly in this time of the variant. So we have to bear that in mind and keep always on top of every situation. We're opening also at this time to increase cruise tourism. We're increasing also our airlift out of the UK and other source markets. And so this is a time for extreme vigilance and monitoring of situations, because you're having all of this in the midst of opening entertainment, schools being open. It is a situation where we have to proceed with extreme caution.
Right. Mr. Chapman, you are the man when we talk about extreme vigilance and making sure that people are adhering to the protocols. You are the man that we look to as the head of the COVID-19 unit. You've mentioned already that, entertainers, that you've put them on notice that this will be no free-for-all, no cakewalk, that they have to adhere to what you said in terms of numbers and everything else. What's the situation going into the 30th? Are you satisfied with the response that you've been hearing from the entertainment industry so far?
Well, first, let's talk about the situation we're in. Except we had the little flare here the other day. We had the clusters. Yesterday, we had one recorded case. So outside of the cluster that we would have seen, our numbers remain low. There is low spread within the community, and because of that low spread, we still believe that it is possible for us to be able to have some sort of some events and so on. And Dr. Williams is quite right in what she said. There are a number of things that are opening up. Our source markets are opening up, and we have to recognize that our major source market presently has the Delta variant in about 92% of its cases. So we have some challenges on the horizon, but the fact of the matter is, these are the times that we live in, and we have to rise to the occasion. And part of rising to the occasion is being able to establish the necessary behaviors, because at the end of the day, the spread of COVID has to do with human behavior. That's it. The way we interact with one another, the closeness we enjoy with one another, the congregations, being congregated together, and so on. So what we need to do over the coming period And as with the entertainers, is to understand the nature of the disease, understand the ramification of an outbreak. And Dr. Williams was absolutely correct. We have to look at the capacity of the country to respond to any outbreak. Do we have enough lab capacity if we have a large outbreak to do the testing? Do we have the number of persons to do the contact tracing? Do we have the enough room in the medical facility to take care of the people? So we have to consider all these issues as well as the impact it has on our livelihood. And the promoters for sure know how this has impacted on their livelihood. So we can, if we get this wrong, we can get this really wrong. And that is why we need to get it right. We need to get it right from the beginning. We need to be able to put the necessary structures in place. We need to be able to ease our way into this. And while we can get it, when we are getting it correct, then we can probably do some more. But the fact of the matter is that we are in a good position as a country, and we don't want to do anything to spoil it at this point in time.
Okay, and you've reminded them that, it's not a case of I have an entertainment or I have a show and I'm just going to just go open it and say I have 150 people. You've also reminded these promoters that they have to apply for permission. What has that been looking like so far? Have they been applying for permission, or are you expecting most of that to start after the 30th?
I'm expecting most of that to start after the 30th. I think there's been some miscommunication and the channels have been a little blocked, or maybe persons didn't understand what was going on and so on. So what we're doing, we're going to have, I've been speaking to some of the promoters, and we're going to get together at some point in time early next week. We're going to have an old time powwow where we get together, we look at what needs to happen to make this happen, and to put everybody on the same page so they know what the Ministry of Health is expecting of them, and they know exactly how to respond to us, and we know what to they know what to expect from us. So we're going to have a meeting of the minds later on this week, so as to clear up any fuzziness that has been existing out there. And once we're able to do that, then we can start progressing. And I really do expect that the applications will come in pretty soon. And I want persons to understand this. We are not in the business, the COVID-19 monitoring unit, the Ministry of Health, we are not in the business of hammering anybody on the head. We want to work with people. We want to be able to hold one another hand to move forward. And I've said this on many occasions. I want to get out of the house. I want to go somewhere. I want to enjoy myself just like everybody else. But the fact of the matter is, we have to do this in a way that is beneficial to the country, or at least not deleterious to the country. We don't want to put ourselves back into a lockdown, or we won't want to find out that we have a mass amount of people being ill, a large amount of people being ill. So in the attempt to satisfy our livelihoods, we cannot put our lives at risk.
Okay, and I think this is a good time to bring in the Bandleader for Xhosa, Mr. Jeremy Nicholls. Good evening, Mr. Nicholls. What's I won't call it pent-up demand out there right now? You hear Mr. Chapman say he wants to get out too, but we have the truth. The reality is, though, we have to do this thing the right way, and we have to make sure are the promoters, are you guys ready to do this the right way and not to sneak in a couple extra people over the 150? What's the situation on the ground? How are you guys responding to that?
Obviously, it's very exciting considering that we've not been able to work for so long or to function properly for so long. If we really take a look at how we responded to the original directives, we handled that pretty well. There was no major clusters or anything outside of what happened at the end of the year that with our industry, right? And we would have opened from July of 2020, June or July of 2020 through the crossover period. So I think that in the industry we're ready to look at how do we avoid one of those situations from happening again. We are, even though that we're not necessarily high with the starting number, we we understand the need to start slow and and go faster. But we are gonna follow the protocols like we did before. I think that the public needs to be aware that largely we did not have any issues for most of the year until a point where I think Barbados on a whole, we got very comfortable. No matter where you were going, we felt at the time that it was almost like COVID was gone and Barbados was back. So the entire country had relaxed. And obviously, in my world, especially when it comes to soca music, which is seen as like that happy music, we like to dance. We're gonna sing the songs. So it is very easy to just relax, and have a good time. And I guess as we would have seen, that's where problems start. But I think that no more people are now aware, and nobody wants to go into lockdown again. So I think with that, being aware that people will definitely be responding positively, and the promoters or the producers will do what they did before, make sure that we have the necessary contact tracing, sanitization, um, temperature checks, etc. All the things that the COVID-19 monitoring unit would have requested of us, we will have all of those things in place the same way. I think the only thing that we would have liked is to hear, like okay, yes, we're going slow, but do we have to go this slow? That would have been the better thing.
Slow and steady wins the race, they say. Slow and steady wins the race. You got to start somewhere, as you said. I mean, some is better than none. What do you think?
Yeah. No, some is definitely better than none. I think that the nervousness coming from the industry is because it's very high risk in our industry. So potentially you can lose a lot of money, and I think that the producers are trying to mitigate that risk by so it's not really about trying to have a lot of people in the party, but it is more about how do I actually do this party and least likely to lose money while doing it. So that's where that's why the question marks surrounding are there. So but I mean, to satisfy everything, to satisfy the public, I believe that out of the persons vaccinated, I am very optimistic that we will have a high number of partiers will probably be vaccinated, even coming out to the same source markets when they're coming to those events, because
Okay.
so it is going to be interesting to see, really.
Yeah, well, that's a good place to bring in Orlando Newton, the CEO of Ticketpal here. Mr. Newton, what's it looking like? Obviously, it's not just Barbadians who are looking to party. We're opening back up. What's it looking like from your end? You're the man who has the pulse where when people are looking to book for some of these events. What's it looking like?
I wear plenty of hats, as I would like to say, but I must first say thanks to Mr. Chapman and Dr. Williams for the great work that they have been doing. I wear a lot of hats, as I said, as an executive producer of events. I have worked in the infectious division in Montreal during the H1N1, so you understand the issues that are at hand. But what the industry have been doing over the last couple of months is preparing itself, as they have always done, through every issue that the industry have faced. We could look back as far as health and safety. We could go back as far as the World Cup, when we were forced to increase security at events to great rates. Then we could look back as far as any health issues that we may have. I know the industry have done above and beyond when it comes to health. We haven't had any outbreaks of food poisoning because our risk managers, our events, are usually very, very good. What we have been seeing on ground, and I have done a short survey last week of the people in Barbados, they're actually ready to go out, but I think what they really need is a bit of confidence from the health authorities. to say exactly how it is going to be done and is the best way to do it. The same way we did it for the other industries, the supermarkets with the PSAs, like for the restaurants. But what we must also realize is that in every industry, you do have people that will not follow the rules. You have it in restaurants, you have it in construction, you have it in everything. What we don't want to happen is that a few bad eggs spoil the whole bunch.
Okay,
You know
well,
what I mean?
that's a
So
good.
that's
Just stick a pin for me. We're gonna let you develop that point after we come back because we have to take a break. We'll be back with more of the people's business in just a moment. Welcome back to The People's Business Live. And before we went, CEO of Ticketpal, Orlando Newton, was talking about some of those bad eggs that we encounter in almost every business and almost everything. Mr. Newton, you can continue. Yeah, we want to avoid that for sure.
Yes. As I was saying, when our restaurant in December, when we had our clusters all over the place, the only industry that was completely closed down, was the entertainment industry. And Mr. Chapman could attest that, which I spoke to a number of times because I had one of the events during that period of time, that we had no issues. We had one event with issues, and then the whole entire industry was closed down. But we had other industries, restaurants, hotels, and so forth, that had larger clusters than us and remain in operation. So what I think that we're looking for also is an opportunity to work with them, look at it, but not to be felt that as soon as we make one mistake, that everything is going to be closed down again. Because as Jeremy further alluded to earlier, we invest a lot of money, and this money we have one shot to make it back. As you see for the New Year's Eve events, when you close down the event, you can't. It's not like a restaurant that you could open back in 2 weeks and sell the food again. Your opportunity is done. It's done right off the bat. So I really would like the industry to be treated not like a stepson, because we are an economic driver. And I always I was giving my mom this example earlier, when she would come home and my sister would give trouble, and she would beat all 4 kids, you know what I mean? And only one did something wrong, you know, and it just wasn't fair. You know what I mean? So we're hoping that we will be looked at as individual businesses also, not only as an industry as a whole. But I believe that this is a great start, and the marketplace is very excited about it, and we look forward to see what would happen. As I would believe, the industry is not going to probably open up probably the next 2 weeks or so to the fullest, because it does take time to organize the event. And we're hoping, and I'm going to end this one before we move on, is that we're hoping also that we can have a collaboration between the COVID unit, CBC, which is yourself, the entertainment industry, NCF, the Ministry of Culture, also invite BAMP to do a test event that we can actually run the scenarios of what could happen and be able to perfect it even more.
Okay, and I want to bring in Mr. Chapman again here, but before I do that, remember you can also be a part of this discussion by giving us a call with your questions or comments at 228-5562 or 228 5563. Now, Mr. Chapman, now, Mr. Newton was just saying exactly what you were just saying, that you need to have these discussions. You've mentioned already that you're going to have these discussions sometime this week, because I know that you don't just welcome and shut down somebody just because. I'm sure it doesn't work like that. I know that I've heard of you doing warnings before to some establishments. So just respond to a little bit to what he said just now.
I mean, there are lots of things he would have said that I am in total agreement with. There is the last thing you want to do, and I would have mentioned this yesterday at the press briefing. The last thing you want to do is close somebody down. And as he said quite rightly, he has a one shot to get it right and a one shot to make his money back, and that's something that you have to bear in mind when you're dealing with issues like this. This is an issue. I've said it before. Issue of livelihood, and this is also an issue of life. And the challenge, one of the challenges with an industry such as his, is that it requires large numbers of people to gather together. And once large numbers of people gather together, there's a significant risk involved. And it is that risk that we have to calculate. Whereas maybe in a restaurant and someone run afoul of protocols, you may get maybe the waiter being ill, the host or hostess, probably one other person who's not a part of the initial party. But where you have an event, a party, where you have persons moving around, you have persons who have had more than their fill of alcohol, and then you have the loud, the cheering and laughing and talking and so on. The level of risk tremendously increases. And we have to recognize that is one of those things. It's an industry which brings lots of joy to people, but it's also an industry that creates a certain level of risk, which we have to be able to calculate, and it has to be acceptable risk for the Ministry of Health. As I said earlier, we're going to do some work with these guys. We're going to get together. We're going to talk about it. We're going to work out the issues. And once our cases remain low, as they are right now, we are going to be going full steam ahead, and we can see how we can get this thing to work. And I'm looking forward to that challenge. I love a challenge. I think I've told persons the most challenging protocol I have ever written was the protocol for to reopen the nurseries. And that was a mammoth challenge, and I'm thinking that this one will. I'm not even sure if it's going to be as challenging as that one. Enforcing this one might be more challenging, but I think we can get it done.
Okay, all right. I believe we have a caller on the line. Please go ahead with your question or comment. Good night, caller.
Yeah, good night. My comment really is I was listening and I heard.
Hello, good night.
Guy from Ticketpal.
Please go ahead with your question or comment. Please lower your television so that you can hear us and we can hear you.
Right, my television is on mute. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, I believe we're having an issue with the caller. Okay. Okay, right. It seems that we were having an issue with that call just now. But just a few days ago, the Vice President of the Barbados Association of Masqueraders, Brian Worrell, had weighed in on this issue. He said promoters who attended a recent meeting with Prime Minister Motley were committed to adhering to the stipulated maximum of 150 to be allowed at events, parties, and limes, and they were thankful for the support being offered.
Subsequently, after her announcement on last Saturday, we would have discussed with our members what came out in terms of the monies offered. There were no adverse feelings from the membership in terms of what was offered. It does come at a time where it's needed by a lot of the band leaders that have extended money from last year to prepare for Crop Over 2020. And we would have been waiting anxiously to find out if we would have had a 2021 for Crop Over. But sadly, that is not going to occur this year.
Yeah, that is true. But I do believe we have another caller on the line. Please go ahead with your question or comment. Good night, caller.
Very good night, and good night to the panel. My concern is the highlighting of the 92% of the delta from all the
Night
different.
caller, go
Hello?
ahead with your question or comment.
Are you hearing me? I'm hearing you. My concern is about the 92% of the Delta variant that will likely come from other destinations, other countries, etc. Are you hearing me still?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Right. Now, that's my concern. I want to support Dr. Williams tremendously in that. And the gentleman just said something about when person have imbibed more of the drinks. And when you're in this 150 and you're going to have drink, etc., and talking, and you know how it goes, people aren't going to be unmasked. They're going to take off the mask. And you only have to have one variant inside that 150, and there is all hell break loose. I've got a real serious concern, but everybody's talking about the balancing act. I hope they listen to Dr. Williams, and you see this balancing act. I will not say any more at this juncture, but I'll watch and see how the balancing act plays out. I regard you all.
Okay, I want to invite all of the panelists to weigh in on this particular comment by the caller. I'm not sure if you heard the comment, but he has some concerns.
Absolutely not.
The caller said he has some concerns about the
Ryan.
Yes.
I don't know about it, but my other colleagues, but I heard absolutely nothing of what was said.
We didn't hear anything either. Sorry.
But let me help you. Let me help you there. The caller, he had some concerns about the variant one. He had some concerns that when you have 150 people, even though it's 150 people, that people being people, human beings being human beings, they're gonna take off those masks probably in that event. And so he has some concerns that 150 could turn into a situation that could cause us some problems. So I'm going to start with Dr. Williams first on this question or concern rather from the caller. A realistic one, really. I mean, it's 150 people. It's a crowd, and it's people having alcohol, etc. You know, it's possible. How do we mitigate this? How do we mitigate a situation like this? Dr. Williams.
Okay. I'm getting a bit of an echo. The first thing I want to say is that entertainment is a mass gathering situation. And the COVID virus doesn't care what the mass gathering event is. It just cares about how close people are and how much interaction there is between them. Now, we all understand linear spread of a virus. For example, if I have the cold and I sneeze on someone who is right next to me, they may get the cold, regular flu. But COVID is a little different in that it has the concept of a super spreader. So many people who have COVID may not infect a lot of other people. But one person who is a super spreader can infect up to 17 to 19 people by themselves. And the variant situation means that this virus is more transmissible to the people who are in contact with that super spreader than the original strains. I agree with what the other panelists said about the event promoters taking a risk. It is a calculated risk that you are taking because you have to have enough people to monitor your event. You have to have enough lab capacity. You have to have the monitoring of people who are entering to see whether they are vaccinated or not. And then you have the policing during the event. All of these things present a risk to you in hosting that event safely. But the country is also taking a risk in holding any form of mass gathering. And so BAMP's position was, are we in a place as a country to have mass gathering? And whether that mass gathering is for a place of worship, celebration, a wedding, a funeral, we have to ask ourselves, are we in the position? And I agree with what Mr. Chapman has said, that the numbers have been low, but we also want to scale the rates of testing and, of course, the vaccination rate. We're only at about 20 to 30% of the population being vaccinated. And we know that in countries where there have been a general relaxation of restrictions,
Right.
they have been much higher percentages than this.
Right.
So the difference with entertainment events is quite what the caller said. You have mostly younger people, many of whom may not have been able to get the vaccine as yet. You have alcohol, you have a situation where social distancing and having a good time are not usually compatible. And you have a situation where masks may be worn, but then, of course, you're drinking, you're having a good time, and the relaxation of those things occur.
Okay.
So how can we best do this safely? How can we best put situations in place? And that's why we have to really look at this calculation and see what else we can do that we haven't done before. One of the things we're suggesting is to have testing beforehand of people entering the event, as well as favoring those who are fully vaccinated. So we want to see
Okay.
more testing, and especially of the people who are hosting the event as well.
Okay, so then, and I'm gonna bring my entertainment colleagues here. So your preference is for testing and vaccination to be requirement, but we will touch on that. I'm out of time on this segment. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to the People's Business. Now, before we went to break, Dr. Lynda Williams, President of BAMP, was suggesting that one of the things that would help in terms of some of these entertainment events is for people to be vaccinated and for, well, obviously a negative PCR test as well. And I'm going to go now to Mr. Jeremy Nicholls, the Bandleader for Xhosa, just to get you to weigh in on this. I've heard some say we want just vaccinated. I heard some say, well, we will take vaccinated plus if you have a negative PCR test. Is there a consensus on this in terms of the promoters and entertainers? Is there a consensus, or are people going to kind of go with one or the other or both, I guess, by choice individually?
I think that when it comes to the whole idea of vaccination, that most people, including myself, would support persons being vaccinated. I think that we're very careful in trying to impose on someone that they're vaccinated and let that be a personal decision that someone should make as to whether or not they're gonna get vaccinated. I believe that within the industry that yes, the young people may not might have been eligible to get those vaccines, but there is still a segment of the industry that I believe were some of the first in line to take those vaccines because they weren't necessarily afraid of the of the vaccine. They're accustomed to taking vaccines and doing these things. In terms of the negative test, I think that that's a great idea. I support that 100%. Whereas I believe that people, you should look out for your brother, and looking out for your brother, it helps to know. I think it was last night at the press conference. Dr. Ford said, like if you're sick, he's going to take care of you. So for me, I believe that. I believe that we should go out there. We should get should take the test, and therefore, when you come into the parties, it will be great, a negative PCR. But the just to respond to some of the things that we said earlier as well. I mean, if we are going to be saying that the industry that Barbados is open for business, then it has to be a case where we heavily focus on policies that allow us to stay open, and it's definitely going to be needed, like Orlando was saying about the PSA announcements and the support from the Ministry of Health. And how this is done, I'm bringing the confidence into the market. I'm bringing the awareness to the market in terms of how we are going to be reopening. And for the caller's question, when they're very nervous about the industry and the fact that we drink alcohol and we do all of these things, I want to remind him. I think you said it was him that the reality, we opened last year, and we opened very safely. We did not have any notable issues while we opened, and the one instance was able to stick into their head happened at a time where overall in this country we were very relaxed in how we were approaching everything. We started to get back to that normalcy that we've been talking about. So it was then, easy for something like that to happen. But now that people are aware and nobody wants to go into a lockdown, I think that the awareness and the fact that nobody wants to be in a lockdown again is going to bring some sense of responsibility to the people when they come back out to party. And I believe that we will continue with the good streak that we would have originally had, and it will be different this time around when it comes to just being that aware, even though it is 150 people.
Yes. Okay. I believe we have another caller on the line now. If you would, my panelists, if you can't hear, I will do my best to relay to you. Go ahead, caller, with your comment or question.
Good night to you.
Good evening. Good night. Hello.
Good evening. You hear me now? This question is directed to Mr. Nicholls, who I believe is a Bandleader. How are you going to control this? It's a limit of 150 people. We know, and you know, that the people have got friends, and we've seen friends being encouraged to come along. How are you going to be able to control that in terms of your organization, the Fed, whatever it may be? Because somewhere along the line, Barbadians, you start at 150, and there will be a multiplication of another 100 people who you cannot give an account for. Okay, you handle that.
Oh, no.
Have you heard my question?
The caller, I believe that's a very familiar voice there.
Yeah.
Sounds like Mr. Williams. He was suggesting that he was talking about the 150, and he's saying that that he doesn't think that you will be. Basically, he's trying to say that you're going to be honest with the 150. That's essentially what he's saying. That it may be difficult to control the numbers. They say 150, and Mr. Chapman's officers might be out and they might look and they might say, well, this looks like 150 or 160 or 140, but it's actually you stuck in 20 more. But his concern is basically about numbers. Can you control the numbers? And I'm going to let Mr. Newton respond to this first. And then Mr.
I think what people fail to realize is that in the industry over the last 6 months, we have been very proactive in making sure that programs, education, security, health of our clients and our employees are being on the forefront of our minds. Our systems in Barbados, and I'm not only saying Ticketpal, do have the ability to be accountable, very accountable for the amount of people that are inside. And I think that is what is very important, that we can show scans and the amount of people that are inside and the amount of people that are to come in the event. And what we have added to it is also that I can know from Ticketpal standpoint that we have decided to add CCTV cameras at our events that would allow identification of individuals in case tracking is needed. And these are things that our industry have been preparing for over the last 6 months. Nothing is foolproof, but I think, as Jeremy said before, or alluded to before, that the event that caused our industry to close down never got COVID approval from Mr. Chapman, and Mr. Chapman could have correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is where we have to go.
Okay. All right, Mr. Nicholls, I'm going to let you weigh in now because it was really directed at you mostly, but I want to listen. You didn't weigh into. You go ahead.
I don't know why it is a case where there's always the assumption that the producers are going to be the ones to break the rules. That is going to be something where is 1 in 10, if so much, right? So when we sell, we going to sell. Sorry, the feedback is throwing me off. When we sell tickets, we sell the quantity that we expect to put out there. I think, like I said before, nobody wants to go back into a lockdown. Nobody wants that kind of those kind of issues connected to their brands. So because of that, I don't think that you will have people going out there trying to sell more than the 150. But I know that they're definitely going to be on Chapman's case to say, hey, when we could get those numbers up, because when you have a situation where somebody's taking this level of risk, they're always going to try to make sure that they don't lose. From the time they believe that they're gonna lose, those are the kind of things that open up the doors in trying to break even or even actually make some money. So the faster we get some test events out there, the faster everybody sees how it is going to work, the confidence can be built up with the COVID-19 unit and BAMP to see that this can work. The confidence goes into the industry or into the country that in the entertainment sector is on the up and up. Then and the numbers go up. I think that we would not even be having a discussion surrounding a number as specific as 150, because
And I mean, I remember the Prime Minister saying as well that you would also be able to have 150, yes, but you would potentially also be able to have satellite sites, like you have 150 at one location and at other locations. Is that something that's being explored, or is there a certain cost element to that? And I know that there was there's a
cost element to it. There is a cost element to it, obviously, but depending on the brand, because some people obviously have the ability to charge more than others for their particular products. So there are some products that can get away with satellite. Thing. I mean, when we say satellites, I think some people, we do it all the time. Where let's say you went to Soak on the Hill, for example, and you were set up at the center stage. For those persons who prefer the more picnic vibe to the roadside, they are accustomed to what we call a satellite, because there would be a separate screen and sound system that's set up on that side that they enjoy. So it's not a novel idea, but it is just that because we've been doing it before, that now it is something that can actually work to increase the numbers and allow people to be safe in controlling this 150 people.
Okay, all right. Well, we have to take a break here, and we'll be back with more of the People's Business, your comments and your questions in just a moment. Welcome back to the People's Business Live. I have a question here that came in to me. It says, and I'm going to be as honest to it as I've seen it. It's about safety. When people are partying and drinking, the likelihood of them wearing masks and behaving responsibly is reduced. People get bareback, jam on any bumper, and just pick up something, anything, and just run. Will there be members of the COVID unit in there to monitor it? And will those members be included in the 150 count? That's an interesting one. The 150. I've heard one promoter say already that the crew, if the crew is included in that. Mr. Chapman, could you clarify that particular query there for me in terms of the numbers, what the complement of the 150?
Mr. Brian, I love that question.
I had to be truthful.
All right, let's address the question. The first thing is it is 150 patrons.
Okay, good.
Okay, so it would be very unfortunate that you add cleaning crew and stage setup crew and cameramen and all that sort of stuff to 150. That wouldn't be fair at all.
Right.
So it is 150 patrons that you will be allowed. I want to say this. What we are doing here has everything to do with risk and risk management. The question is, are we in a position to allow ourselves to take the risk that we are taking? Is this an acceptable risk that we are taking? I know there are some persons who are completely risk averse, and then there are some persons who will take almost any risk, and then the rest of us lie somewhere in between those two extremes. And yes, we are taking a risk. But the question is, what can we do to mitigate that risk, to mitigate the negative effects of taking that risk? And that's what we're talking about here. One of the things is that we have seen, we have done funerals at 100, we have done weddings at 100. Remember that at one point in time, weddings were 3 or 4 persons. It was the officiant, the 2 persons getting married, and a cameraman, it was the witness. Now we are in a position where we can increase, we can look at numbers at 150 given our level of contact tracing, or medical facilities, and a number of other parameters around. And we are saying, let us see how we can do this and bring that level of risk down. One of the things that we're talking about, and I am a big advocate of, is vaccination parties. And I had put that on the table up front. But the fact of the matter is that you cannot be discriminatory. If you're going to have, you want that you have as many persons in there vaccinated as possible. However, the objective is to prevent the transmission of disease. And vaccination is not the only way of doing that. We can do that through testing. Okay? So you want to maybe, if you have all of everyone in that party vaccinated, then you have herd immunity in that party, which is something that we would like for each and every party. But if you cannot have complete herd immunity at that cohort of people being, which we would consider the herd at that time, herd immunity in the party, then we would want to ensure that anyone who joins the herd is negative. So we want to be sure that while they're there, they're still they will still keep their masks on. They would follow the necessary protocols to ensure that they can have a good party. Now, the fact of the matter is, when a guy has a couple of alcohols in his head, chances are he's going to want to take off the mask. We know that. That's human behavior. There's no way we can pretend that that's not going to happen. Yeah. And as the caller said, somebody can take off the shirt and somebody can say to snatch up something and pelt it away and snatch up something or run and all sorts of things. But the fact of the matter is, if we can establish the herd in a way, and we know from the beginning that the risk is dramatically reduced when we have persons who are vaccinated, persons who have been tested before they get into the event, then we can say, no, we can address this issue. You can say, well, okay, yeah, that guy took off his mask. That is a risky behavior. But given that we would have put the number of protocols in place and that everybody else is following protocols, it reduces the risk significantly. And that's what we're talking about. Management, first assessment of risk, and then management of that risk. And that's where this whole thing lies. How are we going to deal with those issues?
Okay, Mr. Nicholls, do you think that this is going to be an advantage for the people? I know exclusive parties is something very well known in Barbados. Do you think that this scenario will be favor the promoters who put on exclusive parties because they kind of know their clientele beforehand most of the time because they would have registered in some kind of way? Do you think that it will favor those exclusive parties more?
In a sense, yes, because what's going to happen is that the confidence among those people are going to be there. You know, if you know that you are going to a party, now at this particular party, all the persons are vaccinated, you are going to be way more comfortable to go out than, so yes, that's going to be the case. But however, those niche parties are very, like you said, they're niche, and they have a very small subset of people that will fall into that bracket. So because of that, it's going to be, I don't have an actual number, but I believe based on just how typically how the people within the industry operate, I believe that there will be a high number of vaccinated people among them. I'm very optimistic when it comes to that. So when we open up, I think I will see whether I'm right or wrong, but I don't believe that this huge number of people like exclusive or people saying only, we're not going to hear about those. It's going to happen very quietly.
And then I remember the Prime Minister also mentioning, because we talk about risk in terms of health, but there's also, as you said, an economic risk for some promoters as well. That she did mention that there would be some support for some entities, some of these events.
Yeah.
How important is that?
That is very important. I think that it definitely helps because the risk, when it comes to the risk, I keep saying that when you get into the parties, it is like playing high stakes poker. It is one of the only industries that you go and you pre-sell a ticket, let's say 2 months, sometimes 3 and 4 months in advance, and you literally have not just one day, you have 8 hours to execute that event, and that will determine your fate. 8 hours. So when you are under that level of pressure, where you've put up in some cases 20, 30,000 on the smaller scale, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars on the larger scale to do an event, and you are running the risk of possibility of being shut down, etc., is hard. When we do 150 people, I think that the industry was more comfortable at 50. Now that will offset, but I think that if we had done, let's say we had done 200 people plus the subsidy that the government has provided, then that would have been great. But again, we understand that we need to start slow, so we will start off. We have no choice but start slow, and then we would grow from there. But definitely the subsidy is going to help, but it would have been a lot more comfortable if it was, let's say, at 200 plus the subsidy, or maybe if the subsidy was a little more, considering that day 150, just to mitigate the overall risk that is involved with putting on the event.
And Mr. Newton, I also want to get you to weigh in on this as well, because like I said, there is a risk. Obviously, there is a health risk, but there's also a risk for entertainment promoters when they put on these events.
Actually, we are the producers of Tailgate event, which Mr. Chapman said he liked because of our bubble mentality. We know that, as you said, the exclusive events before this pandemic started, we had cabanas where people would go to an event of 1,500 people, and you would still see about 10 or 15 cabanas with about 15 people on each cabana, which still creates a bubble. The allocation from the Prime Minister is much welcome. like anyone else, we wish it could be more and it would be more. Is a one-time payment to promoters who were doing events before a particular time. What I'm more concerned about is the what both Mr. Chapman and Jeremy spoke about earlier, which is the testing. I am present, as I told you before, I'm off island right now, and the testing procedure for you to get back your PRS, your PCR test. I did it on Thursday to travel on Saturday, and I got it back Saturday. My flight was at 5 o'clock. I get it back at 2 o'clock. Knowing an event goer, for a lady to go and buy a ticket to come to an event, I have to get a test on Thursday or Friday, then to get back an answer Saturday at 2 o'clock when the event started at 7 o'clock. She ain't going to get her hair done at all. You know what I mean? So my concern is, do we have the capacity, and this is a question either for Chapman or Dr. Williams to answer, do we have the capacity to test all of these people? If we have 10 events, I've said if 100 people need to be tested for each event, 1,000 extra people, along with opening the island for the tourists to come in, which most flights are leaving on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Do we have that capacity to test, to do all those tests?
Okay, you ask a very good question, because we all can harken back to December, where there was a backlog of testing in terms of, and that might have created some anxiety in terms of people who can't get by my test, and then they were trying to get out of quarantine facilities. Sorry. So, Dr. Williams, do you think that, let's say that we have, and I guess we're going to get Mr. Chapman to weigh in on this too as we come to the break soon, but do you think that we're going to have the capacity, let's say if you have 10 parties in 1 week and at 150 people, that's going into some heady figures there.
Yeah.
Do we have that kind of capacity as far as you're aware?
So we have called for scale up in the lab testing, and we have to seriously look at this as a country, because if you have all these other things going on, increasing people coming in from the source markets, etc., you don't want to get in a situation as a promoter where you have planned an event and now the people can't get back the test results in order to gain entry to that event. One of the things we have suggested is that we look at the use of private laboratories as well and integrate them into the system so that we have an increase in capacity in our country, so that we can be able to do more tests. We also want more testing in general. We want surveillance testing also of all the people who work in key industries. So when we have that surveillance testing, that routine testing, particularly of unvaccinated people who work, for example, in event promotion, you have the same people doing lighting, the same people doing catering, and they're going from event to event. So we want them to be tested on a regular basis, as well as the patrons going to these events. So when you look at that number, if you just have 6 events or 10 events per week, per day, per weekend day for a whole month, that translates into something like 16,000 additional tests to be done. And so we look at whether our country can handle that capacity while maintaining the capacity that we need for tourism at the same time. And that's a very important consideration in terms of resources.
Okay, we have to go to break again. Remember, you can call and get in on this 228-5562, 228-5563. We'll be back with more of the People's Business. Welcome back to the People's Business Live, where we're discussing the protocols and the reopening of the entertainment sector in Barbados, just days away from June 30th. Now, before we went to break, we were looking at the question of testing. Not every single person probably at an entertainment event at that 150 may require testing because they may be fully vaccinated, and then you may still want to probably still get the testing as a backup. Mr. Chapman, this is something that came up last year. I know that it was mentioned as a concern in terms of quarantine and people who were antsy when they were getting back results and that kind of thing. Would this have informed the numbers? Because you're looking at control as well, as you said. Would this have informed, one of the things that would have informed the numbers that you came up with in terms of the 150 to make sure that you have the ability to test if they require, let's say, 75% or half of the 150 from each of these events? Depending on the number of events that you could have in a given week or month.
Absolutely. I think that it is critical for us to be able to manage the amount of tests. Dr. Williams was quite correct. One of the things we will have to look at is the type of test we're going to use. Are we going to look at a PCR test? Or are we going to look at a rapid antigen test, which tells you right there and then if you may have COVID, which is probably something that you might want to do on the day of the event, as opposed to having a PCR test 3 or 4 days before, and then right after you just have the swab, you go to somebody's, you go somewhere and get COVID, and then by the time of the event, you come in with COVID. So there are issues because with the PCR, if you look at our travel protocols, we ask persons to get tested at least a maximum of 3 days prior to travel, and then when they get here, we test them again. So if you're going to look at a testing for like PCR testing for events, now we have to have that conversation with the lab. Now, I'm not a lab person, so I will have to be guided by the doctors and those who run the lab in terms of the practicality of the test, the efficacy of test, the level of efficacy of the test. So it is important that we have that discussion, and those are the kind of discussions that we're going to have. One of the things I want to put on the table is, and it's maybe because it's the type of conversations I hear on the outside, and some of those conversations of, why don't we not, what are we doing about those persons who are coming into the island and all that sort of stuff? I think what I'm trying to get at is what to link the two. Once you're going to hold a party, you are going to have persons from Barbados in that party. And I'm going to guarantee you, and the promoters will tell you this, there are persons outside of Barbados in the Caribbean and abroad who would just love to be in a party too. So it's not only Barbadians that are waiting for these parties, you know. So we may think it's just the Barbadian public, but there are persons who live outside of the diaspora that are waiting for us to say, yes, we can go. Now, when those persons come in, we are asking them to take a PCR test. We're checking to see if they are vaccinated. They had their 2-week vaccination, 2 weeks. They're vaccinated 2 weeks into 2 weeks into their vaccination, fully vaccinated, I should say. When they get here again, we test them one more time. Now, if they're going to come to event, we want to check their vaccination. We want to make sure they're tested again. But then we have Barbadians who don't want to be vaccinated and who are complaining about testing. And it sounds as though we believe that everybody else have COVID and we don't.
Okay.
We have COVID in Barbados. We have COVID in Barbados. This is not like when it first started and we know we didn't have COVID and we were wondering when the first case came in, like in March. This is now 1 year after the initial, the 1 year, 6 months or so after, almost going into 2 years now. Or maybe 2 years, I think it is. I lose track of time. But the fact of the matter is, we have to ensure that everything we do take into account all of those factors. It's not just a Barbadian party. So if you're going to decide that you're not going to be vaccinated, just remember that when you go into parties, there are going to be persons there who are vaccinated. There are going to be persons there who are coming from abroad. There are persons there who are from Barbados. There are persons from the Caribbean. So in the Ministry of Health, all of those factors have to be taken into account. We look at a number of different variables when we make decisions, because those variables impact the entire country. So it's not when we calculate risk, it's not just let's say let's do 150 out the hat. No, there are lots of other thought processes that go into those numbers, and as we look at our capacity to respond, we have to then determine the level of risk we're willing to take.
Okay, I had a Facebook question here, a while ago. Somebody was asking about, right, Mr. Chapman has stated 150 patrons. What is the cap, if any, on staff for the event, given the virus doesn't differentiate between staff from patron? Right, so any cap on staff as well?
No, at this point in time, we did not look at making a cap on staff. The fact of the matter is, if you're going to have an event for 150 persons, then we will be looking at the way staff operate, and that is where the unit comes in, where our monitoring and surveillance comes in. Because if you're going to have an event, then obviously persons from the unit is going to be there, persons from the Royal Barbados Police Force is going to be there, and I expect that the promoters are going to have words with their people before they even start. So we're looking at addressing the issue of staff from multiple levels. So we're not just looking at control and being punitive, but in terms of enforcing and promoting positive behaviors. So it would be very strange to have 150 staff and 150 patrons, because I'm not sure how you're going to be able to pay that staff. If we see something like that, obviously we know that, hey, maybe not all these people are staff. So it is an issue of work. And listen, the fact of the matter is, I've worked with a lot of these guys before. A lot of them are guys of integrity. There's no two ways about it. I've worked with Orlando before. I've worked with Rudy. I've worked with a number of the guys before, and the guys, they are on point. They know what they're talking about, and if they say A, they do mean A. The fact of the matter is, there are a couple others that are, as we said, that are a little skittish, and those are not, and they're not many. There aren't as many as the good guys on the block. So I don't anticipate to have any significant issues with those promoters. And as I said earlier, we're going to be having conversation with them in this coming week. And I would hope that as many as possible of persons, even if you're not officially a promoter, if you're just planning on holding a little get together, a party, a duflicky, whatever the case is, this is a good time to get involved and hear what you cannot do, what the risks are, how COVID spreads, how you are able to protect yourself, protect your people, protect your brand, and be able to provide our country with a template that we can then sell to the world on how you can do a party Barbadian style and don't get COVID.
Okay, I was gonna go to Mr. Nicholls. Mr. Nicholls, yes, to just find out if staff are going to be vaccinated, but I'm coming up to the break. So that's the question that you can marinate on, Mr. Nicholls. Are the promoters going to be insisting on staff, on your staff who are going to be at these events? Are you going to be insisting that they be vaccinated, or you're just going to be happy with the PCR test, satisfied with the PCR test? Again, the discrimination issue comes up to some extent.
It certainly does. You want me to go now, or are you going to go to the break?
Well, yeah, we're going to let you answer that after the break. Yeah, we're coming right up to the break, so I'm going to let you respond to that when we come back to the People's Business Live. Right. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're into the home stretch. Welcome back to this edition of the People's Business Live. I was allowing Jeremy Nicholls, the band leader for Xhosa, to just respond to whether or not some of the promoters are they planning to insist that their staff at some of these entertainment events be vaccinated. Is that something that's on the table right now?
I've not heard anyone say something like that specifically. I am not in a position to say that, that any one person would do that. If I answer the question on a personal note, I personally am not comfortable with saying to someone that they have to get vaccinated. I think that remains a very personal choice. I strongly encourage that you get vaccinated because I understand the importance of being vaccinated and looking out for your brother. Will I go out there and only hire persons that are vaccinated? The answer to that is going to be no, but you will be required to have a negative PCR test within the stipulated time to be part of the team. It is still my responsibility from the time I sign on to do a party to make sure that everybody is safe. And if I am comfortable at the point of having the negative PCR, but I am definitely not comfortable with enforcing facts.
Okay. I want to go to Dr. Williams now. Dr. Williams, given all that we've said here tonight, do you think that there's anything else that we can do realistically, given what we've already done, given the fact that we've reached that level of vaccination, and on your own comments that you believe you should have a vaccination or the negative test as a prerequisite to attending events? Is there anything else that we can do to mitigate the risk that we're gonna be facing in the next couple of days and weeks?
Right, so first of all, I want to thank Mr. Chapman for raising the issue of the type of test. And I just want to say here that the rapid antigen test is suitable for people who are symptomatic. It is not suitable for surveilling the asymptomatic and the fully vaccinated patron coming in to attest for the presence of COVID, because it will miss the majority of those. So if we have rapid antigen testing, it is an additional layer, so that once you do your health questionnaires and so on the ground, on the day of, and the health checks, the temperature checks, and you find that someone may be symptomatic, you could do a rapid test there and then if they should enter, despite everything else that was done. Now, you asked what else can be done in terms of helping this process along and mitigating the risk. Some of the suggestions that we made at BAMP is having that testing done 48 hours before the event of all patrons and everyone who is working at the event, and having online registration. So if you are attending or if you are working, you have to pre-register. We also want to suggest that people also be given a QR code to show that they are registered, and that can also be used as a contact tracing mechanism, and it can also help us to monitor the density of people who are in the place. We can also use technology to help with distance sensing, or using the same telephone, your cell phone, and QR codes to see who are the actual direct contacts of someone if there should be an outbreak with that person. We want to promote that anything that we have be an outdoor event. We're not ready to have indoor events as yet, and I think only outdoor events are being considered at this time. And that all of these things must be accompanied by the same principles of the non-pharmaceutical interventions that we have had all along. Hand sanitization, encouragement of wearing masks. Yes, we know that there's going to be slippages in that area, but we still have to promote it. We still have to promote people being in a safe bubble. So if a group of friends are going together, they may have a separate area designated for them. If they only want their group to be together, then we say you can have those bubble groups in an event that allow those people to be together, who tested together and who know each other's status. So those are some of the things that we could do that would enhance the prevention. And also, I just want to clear that vaccination is the best thing that we have right now. We want to encourage everyone to be vaccinated, but it's not foolproof, particularly against the variants. And so whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, we think that, you should have some form of testing before going into the event. Because if I am fully vaccinated and I have the virus but I don't get sick from it, there's still a risk that I can pass it to someone who is unvaccinated. So those would be our suggestions in terms of mitigating the risk.
And that's a very important point, because I think sometimes we forget that in terms of the vaccination, even though it is important that the people who have been vaccinated, even though the risk is lower, that they still can carry and spread the virus as well. Like I said, we're into the home stretch, and I just want to get some final comments now from Mr. Newton as well. If you want to weigh in on this issue, or if you just want to give your own comments, your own closing comments, sir, on what you see really as what's ahead, really.
What I more like to look at is the future of the event industry in its entirety. I think that we are at a crossroads in an industry that have evolved throughout the years. Evidence, as I was said before, the 9/11, and we have always put our staff and our clients ahead of even making money. Most of us, as Mr. Chapman have said before, we have also traveled a lot. Jeremy and myself, we traveled the world basically. And to go to Jamaica or Guyana or Trinidad, sometimes you have to have your shots, as we call them, right? So this is nothing new to our industry. I think our Prime Minister also in that meeting stipulated that she would make a number of vaccines available for our industry. I don't want to call a number because I got a number in my head, but I don't want to call a number. But she did make it say that they will be available. The process of getting to those are still to be determined by the associations who was at that meeting. But this is a thing that I think that our industry would respond to. We are well traveled, and we kind of understand the need for this industry. And we are hoping that this pandemic will be over soon, but we have realized that it's going to be here for a very long time. What I really want our medical professionals to also think about is the mental issues that have arrived from this pandemic, together with people not being able to earn, people not being able to take care of their families and loved ones.
Okay, Mr. Nicholls, I want to get you to weigh in on this as well. What do you think about the idea of vaccination parties? I wonder if the Ministry of Health would be open to something like that. A vaccination party, you go to a party and you get a vaccination. Whether you go to a party, well, your closing remarks though, you don't have to necessarily go down that rabbit hole if you don't want, but you can. But your closing remarks on what do you expect, what we can expect to come in the weeks and months ahead.
No, the vaccination party would be a great idea. For me personally, like I say, I don't believe in telling someone that they have to get the vaccine, or like it is mandatory to get. But what I believe in doing is encouraging them that it is a good idea, it's a great idea to get that vaccine. So if you're coming to the party and you want to get into the party for free, and the ministry is gonna, or for whatever, and we're gonna give you a vaccine, I am all for that. I have no problem with that, because I believe that you should be vaccinated. However, it is your choice whether or not you decide to do it. I think in closing for me really is that I know that Mr. Chapman has worked really well with us in developing the protocols. I know that we're going to be relooking them as well. But I like the tone coming from BAMP in terms of the awareness and the reminders and the just bringing that awareness to things that sometimes we aren't thinking about, because I don't think that I was really aware that vaccinated persons were still transmitting COVID. So that's new to me, and that's very important to know that, because that also will help determine how we approach the reopening of the industry. We've not worked in a very long time. We need everybody to be on board in doing the right thing. I believe that my colleagues will do, for the most part, the right thing, because that's what they did before. So I think that the more we make certain things aware, people aware of certain things, and we have the information to pump it out, I think that we will see a strong reopening of the industry. And again, people coming from overseas to party in Barbados are going to be vaccinated. They are going to be, because we travel, we are accustomed to getting these shots. So from the time that you hear, that we got airlift coming from here, there, and everywhere, and the persons are coming to party, it is going to be a high chance that they're going to be vaccinated because they're very accustomed to doing that. So I really see a strong and safe. I'm hoping for a safe reopening of the industry next week.
All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Chapman. The last comments go to you. You have a large job on your hands. I don't envy you, but I know that you're capable.
It's a big job. But I want to say something, and I want to piggyback on what we were talking about for the vaccination. I know there's lots of vaccine hesitancy in Barbados, and I just want to say to those persons who are hesitant in taking vaccines. The same companies that make the everyday drugs that we take are the same companies that make the vaccine. Think of it. For all of those males out there, and I dare say females as well, who benefit from it, Pfizer makes Viagra. And Viagra is one of their number one sellers. And if there was some nefarious reason for someone in the pharmaceutical industry to make stuff, I mean, you can stick it in something like Viagra, Tylenol, Panadol, paracetamol, and when we go to the hospital and we are ill, a lot of the times we're so bad in such a shape that we don't ask the doctor which pharmaceutical company made that drug you're going to inject me with, or the ointment that I'm going to rub on my hand to take away the rash, or the treatment for inflammatory bowel disease, or for my arthritis, or for my diabetes. Now, these are the same companies that we're using all of their drugs, but for some reason we believe that now that they have made a vaccine, that this vaccine is going to somehow be deleterious to our health. The two just don't make sense. It just doesn't add up. And I want persons to recognize, go on the internet, Google, look at the pharmaceutical companies that are making the vaccine, and look at the other products that they're making. And maybe call your friend who's a doctor or a nurse and ask them about how many of those compounds do we use presently in our health industry. Okay. And you might be surprised to realize, because we make very few chemicals here in Barbados. So I'm going to stop there at that point.
Thanks a lot. Yes, we're going to have to stick a pin. I want to thank you, my guests, President of BAMP, Dr. Lynda Williams, Head of the COVID-19 Monitoring Unit, Ronald Chapman, CEO of Ticketpal, Orlando Newton, and Bandleader for Xhosa, Barbados, Jeremy Nicholls. Thank you all so much. You've been great panelists. This has been The People's Business, where we were discussing the COVID-19 protocols and the reopening of the local entertainment industry. You have a good night. I've been your presenter, Ryan Broome.